I'm Haley, a new mom in her 30s after a long fertility journey, figuring out motherhood one snack break at a time.
And I'm Susanne, navigating fertility after loss in my 40s while raising a teenager and still hoping for one more.
Welcome to Two Truths and a Hormone, the podcast where age gap meets egg counts
And real talk meets real emotion.
We're diving into infertility, womanhood, and everything the brochures forgot to mention. The truth is, it's messy.
The other truth, you're not alone.
And the hormone, well, she's along for the ride. Welcome to another episode of Two Truths and a Hormone. I am your co-host, Haley.
And I am your co-host, Suzanne. Can you believe we have made it to episode 5?
I know, it's insane. I hope y'all enjoyed our last episode. It was a really fun episode, so make sure you go check that out because it got maybe a little spicy.
Just a little bit. So in full transparency, we are kind of pre-recording a few episodes just because of travel things coming up. So that episode hasn't posted at the recording of this. By the time this goes out, it will. But what has posted is your story. And I didn't get to check in with you last episode on how you felt about it because we recorded it back to back. But how are you feeling about your story being out there for 24 hours now? Well, almost 24 hours.
Almost 24 hours. Yeah. I'm feeling okay. So I think at like 10:30. So our episodes post at 10 o'clock. And at 10:30, I finally got a chance to sit down, open up Facebook to start scrolling, and I schedule all of our posts. So I got the notification that the scheduled post posted, and I was like, oh, that's right, my episode came out today. And then I was a little anxious, not for the story being out. It's more so I'm afraid that did I say something that people are going to misinterpret? Did I say something incorrectly? How are people going to take this? So it's more of the anxiety about that. So I tried not to think about it yesterday because I would start spiraling. But I'm feeling okay now.
Okay.
The reason we're doing this is so that, if somebody listens to it, hopefully they don't feel alone. So, but I'm feeling okay now.
Good. I know you're like me. So I schedule the YouTube post and I don't get an alert to that, but I did subscribe to our Spotify. I mean, obviously. So I got an alert that, Two Truths and a Hormone has a new episode. I was like, and Scott and I and Bella are all on summer break. So our days are just kind of And so I was like, oh, it's Sunday. Oh, it's a new podcast. Yeah. And I agree. I think I know a couple of my friends have reached out that have listened to it that, at the time that they reached out, it had just been up to my story and then now your story, but they knew it, but to hear it all in one setting, and kind of the reality of it all, I think was kind of eye-opening for some. I know one of our friends, John, which shout out to John because he listens regularly. It was funny. We had gone out to eat with him and he's like, so I know y'all talked about that y'all are about to post something that can be controversial. What is that? He's wanting spoilers. And so that kind of is a segue into what this post is about. So go ahead and Haley, you take over.
Yeah. We're gonna today. We mentioned, I think, at the end of the last episode that we were gonna talk about religion, and so I wanted to talk about this because as a Christian, when you're faced with adversity, and I mean specifically, we're going to be talking about fertility, obviously, but really any adversity, you're kind of faced with kind of two options, and that's either you're going to run toward God or you're going to run away from God. And I think we fall on opposite sides of that. So I kind of really just wanted to dive into that a little bit. Suzanne, if you want to start, maybe talk about what was your faith like before your miscarriage? You can go as far back as you want, whatever you think is helpful.
Yeah. So I was raised Christian. I grew up going to the Presbyterian church in my hometown. And it was, we went every Sunday in your Sunday dress. My church had, it was the quintessential classic kind of image of a church, stained glass, the pews, everyone sat in their spot. If someone sat in your spot, oh my goodness, where are you gonna sit, kind of thing. I grew up going very, very regularly. Have always believed in God. Not necessarily in the way that there were things I questioned. And one thing I learned pretty early on, through interactions with my grandmother, and then also interactions with some of the people at churches, there's two I don't want to say two sides to religion, that's not the right word, but like, you have to believe this way or you're wrong, or maybe you can question a little bit kind of thing. And I always just kind of questioned and talked about things. And so there were times like it was very quickly shut down. When I was 13, my dad went through a horrific work accident. He was burned significantly on most of his body, head trauma, his heart stopped multiple times. Like there were lots of things. And that really, I struggled a lot at that time, because growing up, it had always been, God knows everything that's going to happen to you. He's in control, all these things. And as a 13-year-old, I could not in my brain hold that God loved us and cared for us, but he knew, what was going to happen to my dad. And that kind of opened this like floodgate of like, so he knew like these babies that are beaten or killed or raped, all these things. I'm like, I can't hold both of those as true and have a good relationship with God. And I brought that up in church and was very quickly told how wrong I was. And so that kind of started this, like, I never didn't believe in God. Right. But I will definitely say that God and I have gone, through, not speaking, or like, I've always been reminded God's always speaking to you. Maybe I'm just not listening and I'm not on speaking terms with God in that moment. I always joke that going to church is like couples therapy for God and I, where I'm like, okay, I hear your side. I get it. But I really did kind of, pull away from church a lot, especially as I got older and going to college, and it wasn't like, you had to go. Right. I did have my daughter baptized in the Presbyterian church. So my ex-husband, her father was Catholic. I was not. And we went to church some, because after my daughter was born, we did move back to my hometown. And so I went to my hometown church for, off and on. And then when we moved again, like, just never really found a church I fit that I liked. When I started dating Scott, so Scott grew up in the Nazarene church. It's a Christian church as well. And he and I tried to find a church. Like, he hadn't really been going there. Didn't really find a church that fit for us. And we ended up going to his church. And I loved it. I loved the community and the preacher. And so we've been going there. And before our first miscarriage, I did get rebaptized in the church, and I joined the church. I
didn't know that.
I did, yeah. Like, it was something so, it sounds like my life is just all drama, and it's not. I was going through a family issue that at that time, a coworker of mine was just really talking to me a lot about, God seeing me through this and God getting me through this. And it was the first time in my life I really was like, okay, like everyone says, lay it at his feet. I'm going to do it. And I still struggle with that quite a bit. And we'll get into that as the episode goes on. But, so I've been going there. I kind of rambled and lost my train of thought. So through Scott and through his family, it really kind of got me back into the church a little bit more. I think one of the biggest things is, it was so funny. It was probably like the third or fourth time I had been to the church that we go to now. And the preacher was, the sermon was on, I'm not going to quote scripture. I'm not even going to pretend like I do, but, in the Bible, it talks about, if you look at someone inappropriately, gouge out your eye, if, things like that. And he was talking kind of like the metaphorical part of it and things like that. Well, he broached divorce. And almost immediately my hackles went up, because a lot of churches are very much, against
Yeah.
divorce, against a divorced woman, and I'm not going to get into why I'm divorced. That there's other people
Yeah.
involved in that, so I'm not going to. And his deliverance of it and his view on divorce and his interpretation and things like that was very welcoming to me. And I remember going up to him later that day, and I was like, "Hey, good job." Because I was about to be like, did I make a mistake coming here?
Yeah.
And then so like a year later he gave a sermon similar to that, kind of touching on it again, and he found me like later, he's like, how'd I do? I was like, still good, you're still good.
Good.
So yeah, so I grew up going to church, kind of pulled away from it, had already started my path back to it when we started with our losses. So that's kind of my trajectory. I will not say I am always on the best of terms with God. This definitely has. Oh, why do I already feel the tears coming? What is happening? What
I
is
know.
happening? I was
I know.
not prepared to cry for this one. Oh my gosh. I mean, I still have my toilet paper,
Yes.
but oh, okay. I'm
Okay.
gonna stop right there. And what is your journey? What was
Yeah.
growing up for you and things like that?
Yeah. So I didn't grow up going to church. I grew up going to vacation Bible school in elementary school and like during the summer. That's pretty much like the main church I got kind of growing up. My junior year of high school, I started going to church with my boyfriend at the time, and I kind of just kind of stayed there even after like we broke up or whatever. I just kind of kept going. And then I was really invested. After I graduated high school, I helped like in the leadership of the youth group still, so I was still around. I like my friends. I had like a few friends that were really involved in the leadership as well, and so you could find me there every Wednesday night, every Sunday morning, every Sunday night. Like I was there as much as I could. I loved it. Um, and then I I met Jake, and then I moved to Oklahoma, and so I moved September of 2018. We got married in November 2018, and then in 2019 I really wanted to find a church. So the church I was going to was a Southern Baptist church, and then um, Jake had so where he met Scott was a Nazarene college.
Yep, SNU,
Um,
Southern Nazarene
yeah,
University. Yep.
yeah. So he kind of was in the Nazarene as well. He
Was he
his
Nazarene before
experience.
he went?
No, so he went to. He kind of grew up in a Baptist church, and then I think when he got a little bit older, when he could kind of like make his own decision and everything, he was going to like a Methodist church. I don't really know. I think just the Nazarene, Southern Nazarene happened because of like football and stuff. So he kind of just ended up there. But so we tried a couple Southern Baptist church here in Oklahoma, and they were very different than the Southern Baptist church that I was used to. I felt like I was getting yelled at the entire time, which is not at all my experience with my church back in Texas. And then we also tried a Nazarene church, and it was a very small church. Nothing wrong with small churches. It just, really wasn't my vibe. Um, I was kind of like going to like a medium sized church, I would say. It
Yeah.
wasn't huge, but it wasn't small. I felt like the perfect size. So we did that in 2019, and then of course 2020 happened, and
And the
so
world shut down.
the world shut down. So we kind of stopped our search. And then that's kind of, at the end of 2020 is when we kind of started our fertility journey. So, um, like I said, I was in it. I've been to Africa on a mission trip. Like I've
That's
been to
crazy.
several mission trips. Like I was really, really involved. And so I would say that right before the fertility journey, I would say that my relationship with God obviously wasn't the strongest because I wasn't in church and everything. It was still there, but I do think that it was kind of starting to lack a little bit just because of the season of life I was in and everything like that. Um, yeah, that was kind of what it was like before the
It sounds like we've
fertility.
had kind of similar, right? Like that kind
Yeah.
of ebb and flow of I mean, you definitely were more involved in the church than I was.
Yeah, I hadn't really ever had like I think I honestly the fertility stuff has been the hardest thing I've ever gone through. So like I haven't had a lot of struggles up until now. And is that because of my age? Possibly. Am I just lucky? Yes, compared to other people's stories. So um yeah, so I don't know, do you want to kind of dive in a little bit of kind of where you are at now? Or
Sure.
like, was there any like anger? Have you felt any anger? Have you ever kind
Oh,
of
oh yeah. Oh, I already feel the tingling. Oh my gosh. I was
So I
not
guess to
prepared for this.
I know. I guess to kind of, I mentioned that there's kind of two sides of which way you can kind of lean when you're going through adversity. I will say that Suzanne is more on the side of she's leaned into her faith more.
Tried.
And I'm
Not
yes,
nearly. I think
yeah,
in comparison, like when you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, you've been, and I'm like,
yeah,
nah.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm kind of more on the side of where I've pushed away.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
I definitely have, like, I definitely have, and we'll talk a little bit about that. It kind of ebbs and flows, but yeah, I can
yeah,
definitely start. And if I ramble, cut me off because
yeah,
there's
no,
lots
you're
of
good.
thoughts. So I've always, you hear about these people like, oh, God spoke to me. I could feel, this, and I've always had like this enviness of like, okay, God, send me this sign. Like, talk
Yeah,
to me. Like, I got okay. Um, and I think the one time I can truly say I felt that, and whether it was a coincidence, and I think this is where, for me, I struggle because so many times I can look back and be like, well, maybe that was it, and you brushed it off as a coincidence. Maybe it
yeah,
wasn't, and it really was a coincidence. Like
yeah,
um, I was going through a lot, family wise, and I was having to make some really tough decisions. And Scott and I were driving home from work, and Scott, I always joke that Scott and I complete each other because I am a lyrics girl. Like musicals, music, like the song has to speak to me. And Scott
yeah,
could care less about lyrics. He is like the instrumental music part.
yeah.
And we were driving home, and he randomly put this song on. It's a song by a Christian group called the Crab Family, the Crab Brothers. And I honestly cannot remember the title of it. And what was funny is earlier that day I had been talking to my coworker about that. Like, I need something from God. Like, how? And she's like, you've just got to lay, like, you're caring too much. Like, you've got to lay it at his feet. And the song, the whole point of the song is that God never said the cross wasn't going to be heavy, but he never said it was going to be easy. But he's walking through the fire with you. And by the end of the song, like, I'm just bawling. And I'm like, I turned to Scott and said, how did you know I needed to hear that song? He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the lyrics. He's like, oh, I just had that tune in my head and I wanted to play it. And so, like, my initial reaction was to be like, oh,
That's
what a coincidence. And I'm like,
crazy.
right? And so,
That's
like,
crazy that his mind works that way.
yeah, right, yes, for sure. And so, like, in my, like, my initial reaction was like, okay, that was a weird coincidence. I'm like, no,
Yeah,
I'm not going to brush this off. And maybe it was a coincidence. I don't know.
yeah,
But in that moment, I was like, okay, God, like, if that's what I think it is, or what I hope it is, okay.
yeah,
Um, and so that kind of started my trajectory into kind of coming back into the church and things like that. In regards to trying to conceive and things like that, it definitely has ebbed and flowed. Like, we took a break after our second miscarriage. So we got pregnant. We got married in the church. We got pregnant. Saw heartbeat. If you listen to my story, we saw heartbeat at 7 weeks through a private ultrasound place. So we thought we were safe. We're like, yeah, we can tell people. Let my mother-in-law and father-in-law tell people. So everyone at the church knew. And we were the hugs and the congratulations. And it was probably a week later that we found out we lost our baby. Maybe a week and a half. And so, like, our preacher called us and prayed with us, and and they were really great. And there was definitely the conversation, like, God can handle you being angry, like he's used to it. Oh my gosh. So there was definitely lots of anger at God. I can't say that I was graceful in it at all. There was a lot. But I really leaned into it. I held tight to that, 1 and 4, and it happened so often. And then we got pregnant so quickly after. I mean, it was, I think, 2 months, maybe 3. I think it was 2 months of, like, actual cycles. It was more than that because it took so long for my cycle to come back. But I was like, oh my gosh, see, like, he hears us. And I was trying to be, like, more aware of, like, getting up and spending time reading the Bible, just trying to, I don't want to say be a better Christian, because I don't want to imply that you're not a good Christian if you don't, right? But just kind of be more present in that. And we had our second loss. And it was funny because our preacher, our pastor, was out of town. And so our youth pastor, who was, he's my daughter's youth leader, he called, and he was so sweet, and he's like, it's okay to, like, yell at God. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I know, like, I'm definitely, and like, there was kind of like a pause, and he, like, I don't think he kind of expected me to be, like, so frank about it, but I'm like, there are definite 4-letter words getting said to God, like, there are hand emotions getting, at this point, because it was hard for me to think about God and think, okay, if you are in control, you are blessing these people who don't deserve a baby.
Yeah.
And so I struggled a whole lot with that. And at that time, our church was kind of expanding to another location, and had asked Scott to help with leading worship in regards to music. Scott sings, he does music, so, and we had been doing that, and in that moment I was like, we need a break. Like, one, that wasn't filling my cup in regards to my relationship with God. I could feel myself slipping back to wanting to pull away. And so I knew if we were going to go to church, we needed to go and, like, just be there and be present, not, doing anything else with it. And then, so prior to that, when we had our first loss, we went through all these things, literally found out we may need another DNC. My daughter went to the family emergency clinic for pneumonia, brought her home from that. I was unloading the dishwasher and jammed a knife up my finger and had to turn around and go back to the, go back to the family emergency. And I remember just crying in the car, telling Scott, God has to give us a break. I can't do this. And I remember texting my in-laws saying, does God, like, have a sense of humor or something? Because I'm really tired of being the butt of the joke. And they're like, no, he does, but no. And just, like, at my wit's end, like, I cannot handle anything else. And it ignited, like, this almost trauma from my childhood, because I had a very bad childhood that a lot of people don't know about in regards to abuse and things like that. And I remember my grandmother saying, oh, God never gives you more than you can handle. And as, like, a 7 or 8-year-old, like, I know her heart meant well, but, like, that was really traumatic for me, because I'm like, but who is he to say I can't handle this? Because, like, this is too much. And it kind of reignited all of that through our losses. And I'm like, okay, God, like, you are giving me too much. So we had our second loss. I ended up having quite a few surgeries due to some other things going on. So it was kind of like when it rains, it pours. And I think part of the reason why I have tried, and I say try because I am nowhere near where I want to be or where I could be, but why I've tried to lean more into my religion is because of past traumas. I have this need for control, right? Like, so much of my life feels outside of my control. And it spins, and, there's anxiety and panic that comes along with it. And so through these losses, like I need to be in control. Because when you
Right.
lose a baby or when you're dealing with infertility, you don't feel in control because nothing you can do. You can't do anything.
Right.
And so in order to, I guess, feel more in control, I have tried to make more of a conscious effort to give up that control. And like, okay, God, like you've got this. There's a lady, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. There's a lady I follow on Instagram, and she's posted 2 videos that are hilarious. And it's her as a passenger in the car of like, okay, God, you're taking the wheel, and like you keep trying to grab that wheel back, and so there is still a constant battle for me in that of like, okay, here you go. Okay, but there's our exit. There's where I want to be. Why are you taking me there? Um, I still have lots of questions. I still have a lot of doubt. Um, do I feel 100% better when I lean into my faith and try and give control to God? No. Do I feel somewhat better? Yeah. I think the only thing that keeps me from, aside from my daughter and my husband, the only thing that keeps me from just falling into the worst depression, for lack of a better word, is I have to believe there has to be a reason, and I may never know it. I may never know it. And I think that's part of the reason why I suggested this podcast, is because maybe this is our reason. But like there has to be a reason that I've lost 2 babies and had a chemical. Like there has to be a reason. This can't just be because. Like there has to be a reason. And so I lean into that a lot when I start to spiral and when I start to not be able to pull myself up. Is like, okay, there's a reason for this. And you know, a lot of people are like, that's not real. Um, for me, it puts me in a better place.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I feel like I
No.
just word vomited a whole lot.
No, that was good.
So what? So I know, and I mean, we haven't even got to talking about religion and IVF, and we are like, I think your story is a good segue into that because I do have some not input but some view and interactions on that. But where are you? You know, having gone through IVF, you went through to a women's retreat, which I think was through a church, correct?
Yes, it was.
Like, where are you in your relationship with God or in your. And this is a safe place.
Yeah, yeah. So that women's retreat that I went on, I went because my husband Jake, he had gone to a men's retreat through the same church. And he really enjoyed his time. It was nice to kind of get away. You know, it was through a church, and like he said that obviously there was, you know, some like religious things
Aspects
still
to it, yeah.
to it, but he felt like it was more kind of just like it was just a really safe place for like, you know, these guys to get together and kind of talk about things that they're going through and struggling with and everything like that. So he really wanted me to go. So I went. I don't know if it's just because it's women or what, but I felt like the women's it was very heavily religious. Like it was like, I mean, there was some like, you know, things to work through yourself, but it was like, it was really focused on God. And it was really awkward for me because, um, you know, Haley 7 years ago or whatever would have loved it. Like it would have been like I would have thrived. Um, yeah, and it just felt like I was just not in a good place. Some things could come out of that. Some good things came out of that. A lot of the time, like there were like little sessions where you could like they would have you like go off by yourself, and you can kind of just reflect on what was talked about, but like just in general, like I don't know if I necessarily used the time for exactly what I was supposed to be using it for,
You
but I
used
just
it for what
remember,
you needed, though, and I think that's
yeah,
ultimately
that's
what it was
true.
for.
Yeah, there was like a river, and like I found a really nice spot where I could like look at the river, and it gave me some time to really reflect on um, myself. I mean, I do think I did use some of it to kind of talk to God and be like, what the heck? Like, and I guess that kind of, I think now I'm opening up more, but we can get to that. I can talk more about kind of the process through IVF and everything like
Yeah.
that. I think part of me, and I know you're not supposed to look at it this way, but I did, and I think it's probably natural as well, is going through it and having this thought of like I was so faithful to you, like you just like I've done all these things and like obviously like it's not gonna compete to what God has done, if that's what you believe. And so like there's a thought that I'm like, yeah, I'm not supposed to think of this, but like also like I've done all these things for you,
Yeah.
God. Like
Yeah.
I
And the thing
I've
is,
gone
you
on
did
these
all
mission
those
trips.
things before
Yeah.
your fertility, so like you weren't doing it
Yes.
like, oh, if I do this.
Right.
So like
Right.
your heart was in the right
Yeah.
place doing it, right? Yeah. No.
Right. Yeah. And then and so like I think there's obviously anger towards God, but then it was also like exasperate. Is that the right word?
Exasperation.
Exasperated.
Yeah, or you were
Yeah.
exasperated. Very good. Yes.
By other Christians and um I think I mentioned it that there was a lady that I went to church with and she posted an article about how horrible IVF is. And of course I read it. I probably shouldn't have read it.
Probably not, but
This
yeah.
was probably when we were about to start like our next 3 rounds of IUI and just like reading it and it was just like if God thought you were worthy or if God wanted you to be a mother, he would make you a mother.
Yeah.
And like you said, like there's all these people that do horrible, horrible things to their children, and you're telling me that God doesn't think that I'm worthy? Like I want a baby so bad. Like I want to love them. I want to like help them grow to be the best person that they can be, and you're telling me that I'm not worthy. You're telling me that God doesn't think that I can be a mom? Like that's like I can't believe that.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense that there's these people who are hurting these people and apparently they're worthy. Like that doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yep.
And then like when we started going through IVF, that's when like all the Roe versus Wade stuff was happening. And
I
so
remember
then
that because you were worried
yeah.
about your
And
transfers
then
and
now
things
it's
like that.
like this is my last option and now this is being threatened because Christians think that this is not right. And whatever, you have your own opinion, but like you don't know what it's like to not be able to have a child until you are that person that cannot have a child of their own. And like this was my last option. And now it was being threatened to be taken away because God doesn't think it's right. Um yeah, I don't
Yeah.
I don't really know where to go from there. It was just there's obviously still a lot of anger and frustration.
I couldn't tell it all. Well, and
Yeah.
I think that's the hard thing. And I think within Christianity there's, I don't want to say different levels, but like there's, people who take, words at black and white value. I think I tend to be a little bit more lax on that. I was watching a video and it was someone talking about the Bible and it's this the Word of God. It's the Bible, but it's translated from a language that doesn't really have a direct translation. It's
Yeah.
created by man, and I don't mean man
Yeah.
as in male, but yes, male. But like,
Yeah.
so we are fallible, right? We are not infallible. We are going to make mistakes. And it was about the usage of the word when it was talking about God creating Eve to complete Adam, and how when you read it for black and white value, it's women are subservient, and because we are to complete them, and that the true word that was used doesn't have a direct translation, and it doesn't mean that, and kind of about where, anyway, my whole point of that is, so I tend to be more on that side, right? Like, yes, I'm going to read this, these are, for lack of a better word, my guidelines of how to live my life, but I'm
Yeah.
also going to understand it may have been translated with a close word, not the exact word. Um, and I have been told I am a bad Christian for that. And if I am, I am. I know that I fall short every day in regards to being quote unquote a good Christian or living in the way that God would hope I would. But I do my best. And
Yeah.
I think ultimately that's what God wants for us, is for us to do our best. Um, and I struggle with, the idea that, IVF is bad because, God created people who came up with chemo and surgeries to save. I
Right.
mean,
He
years and
created
years and
science.
years ago, people died from appendicitis because there was no surgery for getting
Right.
your appendix removed. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, so let's get rid of that and chemo and for sure Viagra and like
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
things. And so I struggle with that. I will be very honest. I don't know. I don't want to say my church's standpoint, but for lack of a better word, my church's standpoint on IVF, it's not anything
Yeah.
that's ever really come up. Um, I had not an interesting, it was a fine interaction. I was talking to, I was at my in-laws house, and it was when we finally made the appointment to see a fertility specialist. And I said, I don't know the church's stance on IVF. And my mother-in-law, her father was a pastor, so she grew up, in the church.
Yeah.
She is, the type of church member. She's at all the functions. She does all the things. I am
Right.
not, I go to church some days I don't. I very much feel like there are times on a Sunday morning I am closer to God at home in my pajamas with
Right.
my cup of coffee, and that would mean more to him than if I'm sitting at church thinking about all the
Right.
things I need to do because I don't want to be there.
Right.
Um and so she kind of was like, what do you mean? Like, why would they have a problem with it? Which I was really surprised about because I figured she would
Yeah.
have known
You would
all of
already have known.
um and so I kind of, was like, well, with IVF, you get possibly more embryos than you could use. And then there's the conversation of what you do with those embryos if you're not going to use them. And she's like, she had kind of, and you could
Yeah.
see like that realization. She's like, oh. And there was no judgment whatsoever. But it was in that moment, and not because of her, but it was in that moment. Scott and I were talking later, and I said, we will never, I mean, we would with her, but like, we would never do the cute, like, announcements of like, this many embryos, this many
Yeah.
blastocysts, this many eggs. I said, because it's not
Yeah.
anyone's business. Because the reality is, Scott and I probably are only going to have one, maybe two, right? Like, we already have Bella. I'm 42. We're looking at IVF in 5 years. So I'm what,
Right.
45 to 47 is probably, oh my God, that
Right.
is scary to say those ages. But, but then you hear about, again, I always refer back to Instagram because I follow so many people. Like, her name's Kelly. I don't know if you follow her. She's a female
She's the NASA
astronaut.
astronaut. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, she had so many eggs that turned into embryo.
Yeah.
One viable embryo, and
Yeah.
she lost it at
Yeah.
6 weeks, and she's going through IVF again. Like, just because you have all of them doesn't mean they will work. You and I
Right.
talked about, like, statistically, your first transfer doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
so many of the other people that I follow, they're like, the goal is to get 3 embryos because you get
Yeah.
one out of every 3.
Yeah.
And then there are some, they're like, I got 9 embryos. Like, good. Yes, yay for you. You have more chances. I'm so
Yeah.
happy for you. So I don't even know where I was going with all that. But, so, like, there are things that if we have to go the IVF route, let's be honest,
Yeah.
we will hold very close to heart, which you talked about even with your story. Like, you are not sharing how
Yeah.
many you have, what your plans are after, because there is so much judgment, and it's so mind-boggling to me because I'm like, the whole thing, like, in Christianity and like in the Bible, it's like, don't throw stones. Like it's not our job to judge. That's God. Like, if we meet our maker or whatever happens, happens, and it's like, you did this, like,
Yeah.
okay, that
Well,
is
I
something
think,
I will, cross that bridge when I
yeah,
get
and
there.
I think what's also interesting is because, I did talk about it a little bit in my story about like we chose IVF. Like, we're okay with IVF. Like, obviously, you know, w- we love IVF. That's how I got my baby.
Yes. Yeah.
So like there is still like a guilt of like what happens if we don't use all our embryos. And like although we are happy with our choices and we made the best choices for us and like but if that time does come, like there is still a guilt. And I think that some of that guilt does stem from like that religious aspect for me. And like um yeah.
Well, and I think there's so, I don't want to say sides necessarily, but
No,
there's sides, so many viewpoints. Like I was listening to
yeah.
a woman, she's Christian, grew up Christian, and she was talking, it was more than just IVF, but she did refer to IVF along with other things. And she said, the debate isn't about IVF or this or that. She said the debate that we really need to figure out medically, if we're going to try and answer any questions in regards to IVF or anything else, is when does life start? Is it at conception? Is it at heartbeat? Is it, and I'm not getting into the political stance of any of that. And I get where she's coming from, right? Because like, I had a chemical pregnancy. We lost the pregnancy at like 4.5 weeks, which is probably around when an IVF transfer would be, like the size of the blastocyst embryo, whatever you. Yeah. And I'm like, I feel very different about that loss than I do my other two, which creates a lot of conflict within me because I'm like, okay, do I say I lost 2 babies and a pregnancy? Do I say I lost 3 babies? Do I just say I lost 3 pregnancies? Because to me, was I pregnant? Yes. There was no heart development.
But like medically,
there was no fetal pole. Like if you go and look at like developmentally where you were in your pregnant, like I didn't have a fetal pole. I didn't have a heartbeat, a heart development, let alone a heartbeat. And so it's a very different connection. It's a very different feeling. And so, for me, that's, with IVF, is it still losing a pregnancy? Is it still losing a child? Is it still losing something you created? Yes, but it's more along the lines of the chemical, depending on when you lose, right? Like if you implant and it doesn't take. And there is still, a whole level of loss in regards to that as well. So I think there are so many different ways you can view everything.
There's so many layers.
Which is okay. We are created to have thoughts and views. My struggle is when religion is weaponized, for lack of a better word. And that is one thing, like, I am raising my daughter Christian. She just left today to go to youth camp for the week. Like, she is part of the youth group. But it's still, I still raise her with a very open-handed when it comes, like, in when I went through I say course, so you go through classes to become a member, and it's just kind of talking about the beliefs of the Nazarene Church.
Right.
And they were talking a lot about like what our beliefs are close-handed on, meaning these are our beliefs, there's no wiggle room in what we are open-handed on. And so a lot of, and probably more than even within the church I am very open-handed on my beliefs, because for me, I want my belief and my Christianity to be inclusive, to bring people in who maybe, they need that. They're in a moment where, like for me, where I was struggling and I needed someone to be like, hey, he's there for you. Like, even if you're not ready to have him be there for you, he's there for you. And when we are like this on everything, it pushes so many people away, and it hurts, and we have enough hurt in our life as it is. I have to, for me to believe in God and to put my faith and trust in God, I have to believe he does not do things to hurt us. Like, I have to believe that. Like, I cannot believe that he creates this beautiful baby and knows that they're going to be raped at 6 months old. Like, I can't. If you want me to have a relationship with God, I cannot believe that. Right. And that is my choice.
Yeah. And like I said, I think like there obviously was a lot of anger towards God, but there's also, it was a lot of like I'm already feeling, the pain and feeling the guilt of it. And then you have these people who are like just talking about it and just throwing all this at you, and like are just like, I don't know, what's the word, like I can't think of the word. Just like multiplying that belief, I guess, that you
Mm-hmm.
have of yourself. They're just it's just adding onto it, onto it, onto it, and then you just feel even like more like a worse person. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm already mad and feel like my body has failed me as a woman, and now it's like even worse. Now
Yeah.
it's just throwing
Now
more
it's at a spiritual level.
more.
Like, not only is your
Yeah,
physical not good
yeah,
enough, you
yeah.
spiritually are
Now
not
I'm
good
not
enough to be a mom.
spiritually. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I think it's funny because, like, we wanted to do this episode to talk about religion. I don't have an answer. I don't know what's right.
yeah,
And I know you don't either. And I think we do what we can to survive the trenches of this. And I think
yeah,
just giving people grace and understanding that. And it's so funny because, like, there are definitely, God has a plan. When people say that, I'm like, but
but it's like,
I do hold in
why was
hope.
God playing that? It's like,
Yes,
I
so
guess
there
kind of
it like, I
why.
don't have to, I don't like his plan, and
Yeah,
if
yeah,
this is God's like, I will tell, like, God, your
yeah,
plan sucks. Like, I
yeah,
don't like it, don't like it at all.
yeah,
But at the same time, for me to give, and I think that's one thing that I've always, like, that I try to tell you as you were going, like, you have to give yourself grace. And for me to give myself grace, I have to believe he has a plan. I don't like it.
yeah,
I don't agree with it. It sucks. When I finally meet God, I'm going to say, God, this plan sucked. I don't like it. And if I
yeah,
still don't understand why that plan was there, you better tell me when I walk through
yeah,
those gates why that plan was there.
yeah,
Um, but for me, it's because that is the only way I can get through
yeah,
each day.
yeah,
And that's not to say I don't have anger. That's not to say I don't have doubt. Um, that's not to say that more times than not, when I'm praying or talking to God, or, having my moments, more times than not, it's me giving him a
yeah,
piece of my mind.
yeah,
You know, just because we don't have the answers and it's not
yeah,
fair, and yeah, it sucks. And I think what people who haven't gone through this don't realize is how isolating and how lonely and how much you blame yourself. So please don't give more
yeah,
reasons to blame
yeah,
ourselves.
for somebody to hate themselves,
Yeah. It's funny,
basically.
like, my mother-in-law, I love her. I love her so much. And I was having a low moment after one of our miscarriages. And she's been, this was well after.
Yeah,
But I have my low moments. And she's like, well, I was talking about my age and, IVF and 45, 47, all that. And she's like, well, I think it was Sarah. I don't know. I'm going to say, and I might be wrong. She's like, well, God bless Sarah with a baby at 105. And that, like,
yeah.
she meant so well. And I'm like, oh, I'm 105 without a
I
baby.
don't know. Like, that's so terrible. Yeah,
And I don't want to,
yeah,
yeah. So, I know from my experience, at least, like, you know, so our youth leader is married to a pastor who I am friends with, so she and I will go get brunch and stuff. And she and I have talked a lot about religion and IVF, and, like, she has never expressed, like, no, this is
yeah.
bad, God wouldn't want
That's
that.
good.
So yeah, so that has been really amazing. With our second loss, the church, the young adult group, got a gift card together for us for food and
Sweet.
things like that. Yeah. And like, I went, I guess, a couple months ago. One of the ladies was having a baby and went and helped meal prep and get the nursery set
Yeah,
up, and it was hard. It was
yeah,
really hard.
yeah,
um but they've been very graceful of, like after our first miscarriage, there was a baby shower for one of the members, and I was gonna go, and I had a gift, and I couldn't, and I sent the gift, and that was that. And very
yeah,
graceful and all that. But I don't know that there's a right answer in regards to religion and interpretation of religion and fertility. I think the right answer is giving ourselves grace and giving
yeah,
each other grace. Like, come on, like, the world is
yeah,
so angry and so divided on so many things. Like, let's not have one more thing to just hate each other about,
yeah,
for lack of a better
yeah.
word.
And like I said, I have found myself recently kind of opening up again
That's good.
about it. There's been a couple times I've listened to Christian music. So I But then, like, even that, there's like a guilt of, oh, am I just now doing this because I have my baby now? And
But you
so
know what? If
now I'm also struggling with that.
don't, I mean, maybe it is and maybe it's not. I think ultimately, and I don't want to sound like I'm preaching. I'm not trying to get you
No,
anywhere. I'm not
you're
trying.
fine.
I think ultimately God just wants us
Yeah.
to believe and to trust in Him, and however we need to get there, we get there. I mean, like I said, like I will die on the hill of I cannot
Yeah.
be a quote unquote good Christian and believe in a loving God
Right. And also,
if in order to do that I have to believe that. And
right.
like I've talked to my in-laws about it. I'm like, this is my stance. Period. Like no one will change my mind on this, because for me to have any type of relationship with God, healthy or not,
Yeah.
this is like I will hold this closed fist. Period. The
Yeah.
end. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm still. It's keeping my relationship with Him. And like I said, like I'm not the nicest when I talk to God. I'm very angry. I mean, I don't want you to like look at
Yeah.
me leaning more into my faith, thinking, "Oh wow, she's so at peace." I'm not. I'm not
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
peace. I'm
No.
not
And I
like,
think,
like
do you
I'm
think
pissed.
there, do you think that there is like a pressure on Christians going through infertility to, I guess, lean more towards God? Like, I don't know, like, if you follow some of these people on Instagram, I'm sure you do, but like, there's people that are very like into Christianity that are going through this. And so, do you think that there's like a pressure for that to like, and like, want to like share more and like, am I making sense?
Yeah. Um. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think. I think I would hope that more Christians going through this share their experience,
Yeah.
because so much what you hear is just the no, no, bad, bad, and seeing like I will say I do feel like there has been like a shift just in Christianity in general. When you look, and I mean, I saw it even as a kid, like the older kind of generation versus the younger generation, because as things are introduced, and that's where you do have
Yeah.
to be careful, right? Like where this was wrong, 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 and then now we have easier access to things, and so well maybe it's not. Like I think there is a very fine
Yeah.
line that you have to tread. I'm not saying there's not, um, but I mean to me, and I look at IVF differently than maybe other people do, because like for you, you had to use IVF. For me, more than likely, we will have to use IVF because of my age,
Yeah.
and so to me, it's the same as a medical treatment you need,
Right.
right? It's not like, and I'm not judging people who are like, I just don't want to get pregnant, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
use IVF and have surgery. Like, more power to
Yeah.
you, do you, whatever. Um, like for me, for us, it's not a choice. It was if we want to
Right.
expand our family, this is what we have to do. And so I do look at it as like, okay, well then, if we're saying, this is okay to survive, or mental wellness, all those
Right.
things, if we're saying those are okay to do, why would this not be?
Right.
If that makes sense. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if there's more of a pressure. Um, I think part of the reason I think IVF gets looped into the conversation of pro-choice, pro-life, and in my opinion, it's not that. That
Yeah.
is an entirely different conversation.
Yeah.
In my
And
opinion.
again, there are a lot of options
Mm-hmm.
of what to do with your embryos. It's not just discard them. And I don't think people, either they know that or they don't know that,
Mm-hmm.
or
Well,
or they're just
there are
choosing
like
not to think about that.
I didn't know until we were going to our fertility. Well, I think I knew a little bit from you, but like going to the
Yeah.
like you can adopt out your embryos.
Yeah.
And now
That
my
makes sense.
fertility doctor was very honest. He's like, more than likely, the people who are doing that have already used all their good quality ones,
Right.
right?
Right.
But you can do that. There's, of course, you can have them destroyed, which I don't even like that word, but
Discarded. I
discarded.
prefer that word.
There you go.
It
I
makes
couldn't think
it
of a
sound
better word, and
greater,
everything I've
but
read it calls it
yeah.
destroyed.
Yeah.
You can use it for
Discarded.
medical science.
Yeah.
Like there are lots of options. I have seen couples that they continue to pay just because they can't make that they can't pull that trigger, and
Yeah.
that, that's fine as well. Um,
But again, it's also just because you have an embryo doesn't mean that it's going to turn into a pregnancy and turn into a healthy baby.
yes. And I think
Like,
that's where a lot of people, I mean, I fell into that when IVF was first, like, kind of getting big, like, you
yeah,
can't get pregnant, you have IVF, you have a baby. And, like, there are so many people, they are not getting eggs, or they don't turn into
yeah,
embryos, or, all of them have genetic issues, or they transfer and they don't take. Like,
yeah,
you are not, and I mean, that's one of the, that's not the reason why we're not doing IVF right now, but that is one of our things of, we're working to pay off all this debt so we can take on the debt of IVF. And it's like,
yeah.
but there's still the conversation that we will have to have of, are we going to take
Like to keep
on $40,000 to $45,000 worth of debt? Um,
to possibly
yeah. And we
have a
we
kid.
may not. And I mean, that's why, like, when we went, like, do I want a baby with my egg? Yeah, 1,000%. I'm not saying I
Yeah,
don't. But the chances of that happening are so slim
right.
through IVF because of my age and my ovarian diminished ovarian reserve and all that, that we couldn't justify doing, like, we
Yeah,
have one shot
yeah,
financially.
yeah,
We couldn't justify doing it. And so we would
yeah.
use a donor, we would use donor eggs, but even that's not guaranteed. It's
Right.
60% chance.
Yeah,
And so I think, a lot of people don't realize, I think if you haven't been through it, and I haven't been through it, so I'm not trying to talk like I know through IVF. If you haven't been through it, there's a lot of unknown that you don't know about because why would you learn about it? And so it's
yeah,
very easy to cast a stone. It's very easy to pass a judgment on the unknown.
yeah,
And I think you have to be really careful with that. I think again, I go back to, there is so much in the world that divides us. Let's not add one more thing.
yeah,
And that's where I come in. That's my viewpoint of it. But I want to say, and I've said it before, and I just kind of want to reiterate it, because yes, it does look like I've leaned more into my religion, and I have. That is not without struggle,
struggle.
right?
Yeah,
That is not without, and it's more so, I'm at my wit's end,
yeah,
and there's nothing else I can do. So maybe I can give this load off. Now, let me tell you, almost every day I'm
yeah,
picking that load back up, and every day I'm like, crap, okay, here you go. And
yeah,
there is still, like, my therapist, she has her own story to share in regards to fertility, but she is very at peace, and very, um, in regards to her process and God and things like that. And, like, I look at that and I'm like, I wish I could be there. Like, how do I get there?
yeah, yeah,
So I think there's, different levels of where you are in your fertility journey. Um, One thing she did say that has really stuck with me, that I hope maybe helps people who are on, struggling with the idea of IUI or IVF in Christianity, is she's like, God is never going to close the door for you. Your door will close when you close your door. There's other options, whether it's IVF or natural pregnancy or adoption or, whatever it is. And there are certain doors that we have closed. Scott and I have talked, and we are not pursuing adoption. But, like, even that, like, we hear so much judgment about IVF in Christianity, but, like, there are people, like, I follow on Instagram, people that I've heard stories, they go through private adoption, and you're talking, $40,000-$50,000,
yeah,
and they're, they get matched, and they're paying for prenatal care and all these things, and then the birth mother is like, nope, sorry,
like,
which,
yeah,
that's fine. I'm happy if she got to that point in her life, but, there's,
like that's heartbreaking too.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's something Scott and I talked about, and I'm like, again, we would get one shot, and I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that.
yeah,
And so, I don't know. I've learned that I'm going to be judged in every decision I make, and I have to be at peace with that and let them judge me, but do what's right for me. And I think
yeah,
that's where I am in my beliefs and my religion. Is I'm doing what's right for me, doing what's right for my husband and my daughter, And we are holding God close to us as we traverse this, and that's the best we can do.
Yeah.
So yeah. Wow, that got heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I figured
I wasn't expecting to cry. I was not expecting to cry.
I wasn't expecting to start crying either.
You did too, I know. I was like, oh.
I know.
So I just, again, I don't think we have any answers. I feel like this episode was just kind of like a lot of rambling of our opinions, which is, I think that's where we are in life. Like, I don't want this to be a judgment. And if, you're a Christian and IVF is not for you, I don't judge you on that.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And so.
Yeah. Well, you have anything else?
I don't. Do you want to do 2 truths and a hormone?
Okay, yeah. Well, I have 1 truth, but yeah. Do you want to go first?
Let's see. My 2 truth. I'll do 1 truth since you only have 1 truth too.
All right.
My 1 truth is, I just sent Bella off to youth camp, so she is gone for a week, and as I'm gonna miss her, and she's a teenager, so it's kind of weird because like she's in her room most of the time anyway. Right. But I'm really looking forward to just kind of a week of like not having that mom guilt of like, oh, Scott and I have, because Scott's been off and I'm, we're watching TV or we're playing a game or we're doing something, and she's, content in her room playing with her friends, right?
Yeah.
Like 1,000%. But then at the end of the day, like there's that mom guilt of like, I saw her for 5 minutes today. Yeah. So it's kind of nice to not have that. So yeah, that's my truth.
Yeah.
And then,
she has fun.
Yeah. And then my hormone kind of ties into that. It is ovulation week, so I'm also very excited to have an empty house.
There you go.
I know, I was so excited. I started my ovulation testing yesterday, and I got my first, so I used the Clear Blue. It's digital. I don't even think they make these anymore, because I messaged you. I was so sad about it. So the ones that I have is you get a circle, an empty circle, like nothing. A flashing smiley, mean like you're entering your fertile, and then the solid smiley is like, okay, you're going to ovulate. And I got my first flashy smiley today, so I was very excited.
Yeah, perfect timing for that.
I know, I'm down to my last 4. Like, this cycle will be my last cycle of them, and then I'm like, I don't know what to use.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think they don't have the same ones, but they have a different option out.
They have one where it's just either a circle or a solid smiley, so I may do that.
I wonder why they did that.
I don't know. But then at the same time, I'm also like, these are like $20, $30, and I could get like the Pregmate or the Premom or whatever line one for way cheaper.
Those are hard. Yeah.
They are, because like if you shadow it wrong.
Yeah.
I need digital. There's no picture. There's no like, if I angle it this way, the light has to be in the same position every day. So I kind of like the digital. So.
Yeah.
But that's my truth and my hormone.
My truth is, so I've mentioned before that I'm currently going through school to become a nutritional therapy practitioner. And started working with my practice client, which is Susanne. I just got my feedback for like the recommendations that I've come up with Susanne,
which you've been so tight-lipped on, and it has driven me nuts.
I know. We're getting there. But overall, the feedback I received was really positive. There are a couple things that I kind of want to look into again, but overall, it was very positive, and so it just makes me feel like, okay, I can do this. Like I do understand this, and I'm on the right track with things. So I'm excited to kind of work on that some more. My hormone was, I don't know if you can tell, I
you cut it.
My hair off.
I just realized that. Oh my god! I knew you had gone and gotten your hair done.
I chopped my hair off. It was a really last minute decision.
I like it though.
Like an hour before, I was like, what should I do with my hair? And I was like, I think I want to cut it. And when I went, I was like, below my collarbone. And so she like cut it. And then she's like, how is this length? And I was like, I think we want to go shorter. So cut off several inches. So
I like it. What was Jake's response? Or is he one of those like he doesn't even know?
He likes it, yeah. I've had short hair before. I've actually have had shorter hair than this before. So, but yeah, it was just a nice change. It feels healthy because like all of the dead stuff is cut off. So I have to like relearn how to style it.
It looks good. Like I'm rocking,
Yeah. So, all right.
Yay.
Well.
So next week is going to be our next episode, and we're going to talk about friends and family supporting, right? Was that the plan? I don't
Like
remember.
what it's like having like a pregnant friend, but like
There you
going
go. Yeah.
through like I kind of all of
All of
it.
it.
It's
Yeah.
kind of all in one. But yeah, so make sure you go check that out. Make sure you go check out our fun episode that we did last week.
And if you're a
And make
family
sure,
or even
yeah,
friends, there is
I
some
hope,
spicy nut, but I think it's a tame spicy. I mean, we're not getting like super
yeah,
graphic, but yeah.
right. But yeah, it is a little spicier. But make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and you're subscribed to like our Spotify and YouTube. It's Two Truths and a Hormone, all spelled out. And if you want to share your story, have any questions, just want to give us a positive comment or whatever, you can also email us at twotruthsandahormone@gmail.com. Anything else?
Hey. No, I think that's it. I think
5 star,
5 star.
review.
Yep. And and if you want to recommend to others, go for
Yeah,
it because our goal is, I mean, if we become famous, no, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
I think our goal is just, to help someone not feel alone.
yeah, yeah.
So.
All right. Well, we'll talk to y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.